Albert Breer, Monday morning quarterback, set to join us. A few topics to dive into. Let me start with Deshaun Watson. The commissioner said that they're wrapping up the investigation. Then they turn it over to their disciplinary committee. Are they two separate parties where the commissioner is not going to rule on Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, it goes to the disciplinary committee where they make a recommendation to the commissioner, and the commissioner has to make the final decision. But I mean, every indication you get, the commissioner, sort of the way that the reason it was done this way was because I don't know that the commissioner wants to be judge, jury, and executioner anymore. And I think that this is the way that the union wanted it too when they were negotiating these things a couple of years ago. So, that's sort of where it is. They always talk to the player, almost always talk to the player last, that happened last week in Texas. And I think the one loose end you want to pay attention to here now is there's still about a month of discovery left. And so they don't really need to make a decision before training camp. There's no real urgency to do it before training camp. I know some people have sort of pointed to this weekend and said, well, this could be the bad news dump. I just don't know that even though the investigation has, pretty much wrapped up, I don't know they would want to jump the gun if they don't have to at this point, because, just knowing that the discovery phase is going to be over when we get to July 30th and then July 1st, they could very easily just make their decision with a little bit more information and a little bit more clarity what's going to come out in the courts over the course of the next maybe the next couple of years.
How do you think the commissioner factors in two grand juries didn't decide to indict him? Now, you have civil cases, you have 22 women. Roethlisberger, Ezekiel Elliott, are they going to be sort of the blueprints here of what the commissioner might do in a situation like this?
Yeah, I think so. And one of the things to pay attention to, Dan, is like those two cases, Zeke and Roethlisberger, happened before there was like a change in the way that they do these things. And that, back then, I don't think they minded preempting a court decision. Since then, they've been a lot more hesitant to do these sorts of things. They've, stubbed their toe on numerous occasions, getting ahead of the courts. Ray Rice, Josh Brown, there are examples of it. And so I think in this case, would you like to have complete closure on the legal process? Yeah, you would. I think it's too high profile a case to leave this as a loose end through the 2022 season. So I think what you're going to see is they likely suspend him. And I think for a significant period of time. And I think the way that it's going to be laid out is that he was irresponsible and put himself in these situations, whether he was guilty or not. He put himself in a position to embarrass his team, to embarrass the league, which is sort of what the verbiage was on Roethlisberger back in 2010. And then I think because there's still, the open-endedness of the legal process, because the civil cases haven't run their course. I think the commissioner is also going to leave open the possibility that he could add to the punishment if more stuff comes out in 2023. Because again, I'm sure you guys have been over this. They've come to an agreement. The sides have come to an agreement that, once training camp starts, they're going to sort of press pause on the civil cases and pick it up again March 1st. And so if there's no closure, if there's no settlement between now and the beginning of training camp, we're not going to have closure on this until 2023.
Help me understand that the owners had an epiphany and now they want to kind of take inventory with Daniel Snyder. Like now you might want to vote on whether you want to keep him as an owner. Like, he's embarrassed the Shield. I mean, what has he done that's positive for the game and for that franchise that now these owners may decide that they don't want him in their fraternity anymore?
Yeah, I think, it's, well, there's the financial part of it, which, I mean, there's the whole don't mess with my money thing and all of that. And I think, if you pay attention to the way the commissioners talked, I think you really saw a change at the Super Bowl. He is very, very careful. Roger is about stepping on the toes of any of his bosses. And that's what the 31 owners are, right? Those are his bosses. And he's careful about speaking for them. And at the Super Bowl, he actually detailed the process for voting one of them out. And I thought like
Hmm.
to myself, when you heard him say that, and I know it didn't get a ton of attention, but when you heard him say that, there had to be people who signed off on that. You know what I mean? Like there had to be people who said, we're okay with you going forward and talking about this publicly. And so I think there has been a change in that this one thing has led to another, has led to another. And, I still don't think we're at the point where they're going to vote him out yet. I think what happens with the Mary Jo White investigation is going to be pivotal to whether or not we get to that point. But they've already sort of broken the seal on starting to talk about it. And that's a step towards the nuclear option. And I think they're going to be very, very careful about pressing that nuclear button because of what it means for all of them. The precedent of taking somebody else's team away, the possibility that Snyder all of a sudden returns fire on some of the guys. What could happen if people are digging through other owners' trash? But I think a lot of it's going to sort of ride on what's in that Mary Jo White report, and then also like to what level. And I know this sounds horrible because you're talking about financially screwing somebody versus some of the way worse stuff that happened in that organization. But I do think part of this is going to be to what level was Daniel Snyder screwing the rest of his partners financially.
Talking Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter, lead content strategist for the Monday Morning Quarterback. A couple other topics here to touch on. Aaron Donald's situation. I think he has, 3 years, $55 million left?
That's right. Yeah.
He's looking at these other numbers that people are getting. What do you think the future is? And I don't know what the Rams' salary cap is to be able to do something new for him. But where are we headed with the Rams and Aaron Donald?
Yeah, I mean, I think Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp will both get done. I do think the Rams to some degree painted themselves in a corner here and so openly talking about how they were willing to do it when both guys had significant time left on their deals. And part of the issue with Donald is his deal's already sort of been mortgaged. There's tens of millions of dollars in prorated amounts that have been pushed off. And so like the way you would do this normally is, all right, we're going to go back into the deal. We'll add like 2 years to the back end. We'll push the lower numbers to the back end and move all the big money up front. And so you'd essentially be creating a new contract on the front of the old contract. So he gets bigger money now and can cash in and be rewarded for what he just accomplished for the team. The question I think then becomes, how do you move some of that money around that you've already pushed off into the future, and what sort of issue that can create for you going forward? And I think that's where it becomes complicated for the Rams. And that's, I think, ultimately, like Dan, they've been playing for so long, and they've used draft picks and cap space that way for so long. And it's just interesting to look at how like all this stuff continues to get pushed forward into the future, and when they're actually going to have to reckon with that. Remember, the cap's also going to go up significantly in the next few years as the new television deals kick into the equation. And so I think because of the amount of money they've mortgaged on Donald's deal, it's complicated. I think it'll get done. But I also wouldn't underestimate Donald's, willingness to push the envelope on this either. He's not there right now. He lives in the area, but he's not there right now. And he's never shown any fear in the past of holding out. Like he staged significant holdouts when really nobody else was 2 summers in a row. So I also wouldn't underestimate his willingness to sort of step on the team's throat to try to get something done.
If this was the Patriots, it feels like the Patriots would move on from Aaron Donald.
Maybe, yeah.
At age 31, he just turned 31.
Yeah.
I mean, what you're going to pay him, and you've gotten his best work.
Yep.
It's like Albert Pujols with the Cardinals. You got 10 great years, and then all of a sudden you're like, we're good. We'll move on from you.
So the difference, though, Dan, to me is like if we go back a decade and you're talking about the Patriots, right? Like the way the Patriots were built and the way the Colts were built, right? And both of them were very successful. So it's not that there's one right way and one wrong way. But the Patriots emphasize balance through their roster. And so what they built, if you took a star out of it, was a little sturdier. Whereas, like, if you remember the Colts, they were very top heavy. They had like 8 or 9 guys making all the money. And obviously they were really successful doing that. But you remember what happened in 2011 when Peyton got hurt and then a couple of the other guys got old. The whole thing came undone. And then they had to completely rebuild it around Andrew Luck in the years to come. And so that's the issue with the Rams doing something like that, is they're sort of built on that Colts model, where you have, and they've been, again, really successful doing it, but you have a handful of guys who you're very, very reliant on, who are making all the money. And when you take one of those pieces out, what does it mean for the rest of the group? I think that's sort of the issue with taking, I guess, a Patriots mentality to that. Now, that said, they've been okay moving away from guys. Like, they got rid of Marcus Peters, they got rid of Jared Goff, they got rid of Todd Gurley, so they've been willing to do it. Donald's just been such a big piece, and I just don't know what happens to that defense in that group if you take him out.
Kyle Shanahan says he expects Jimmy Garoppolo to be traded. He's just not sure when and where. Okay. If you're Jimmy Garoppolo, how do you feel when your coach says, yeah, you're going to be traded? We don't know when or where.
I think you understand if you're Jimmy, because this is so injury related, and he chose not to get surgery after the season, and that was his choice. And, I know a big part of it was like, he felt like, if I give this 4 weeks, 6 weeks, it's going to get stronger, and maybe I can, deal with this non-surgically. And the juncture at which he got the surgery made it tough for the Niners to move him, because now, if you're trading for him, right? If you're another team trading for him, he's got 1 year left on his deal, and he's coming back off of a rotator cuff. Mm-hmm. And so you think he's going to be okay in July, but if you're only buying him for 1 year and there's any sort of uncertainty on that, and you're going to pay him $25 million, that's kind of a tough sell. You'd like to see him throw first. And so I think where the Niners have moved now is to, let's let Trey Lance have the spring. Let's let Jimmy rehab. Let's let all these other teams have their situations play out at quarterback. And then maybe we get to July 1st, and maybe Jimmy can throw again at that point. And maybe Jimmy can show to other teams what he can do. And then you hope like a Seattle or a Carolina comes out of the spring and says, God, our quarterback situation isn't quite what we thought it would be. So that right now is the strategy of the Niners, because of the situation that shoulder surgery put them in. The Niners were patient before, and I think it sort of blew up in their face a little bit. Like, they thought, like, hey, if we wait for Watson and we wait for Wilson and we wait for the Rodgers situation to play themselves out, somebody's going to be desperate and want a quarterback who was in the championship game 2 of the last 3 years. Then he gets the surgery, and that sort of screwed all of that up. I think now, being patient again, there's merit. It could pay off, but there's also some risk.
We keep tinkering with the Pro Bowl. It's just like putting lipstick.
Doesn't work.
Yeah, you put lipstick on a pig. I mean, it's still a pig. What are the possible solutions here, I guess, for the lack of a better word, of what you do with some kind of showcase?
Yeah, they kept using the term yesterday when we were in Atlanta, celebration of the players that are voted in, and I think that's the right way to look at it. I just think, like, maybe the NFL has to look at something as not a money-making event, right? Like, maybe they could truly make it a celebration for the players, right? Like, maybe there's just a one thing where you're like, you know what? Like, we're just going to make this good for the guys, right? Like, we're not like, and I know like that's like diametrically opposed to the way they think, but like, it's just the structure of the sport, Dan. Like, you cannot play that sport like 50% and have it be remotely entertaining, So I've heard the idea that they could play a 7-on-7 game. They could have a big man challenge. They could have all this stuff. You put that on TV. Maybe it works. I always liked the quarterback challenge when I was a kid. That'd be fun to bring something like that back. You have to have the players sign off on it. And God, you and I both remember the Robert Edwards story a million years ago. So how do you do that when you're protecting the players? But it seems like everybody's in agreement that the game itself doesn't work and that it's not up to NFL standards. And if the game wasn't drawing a rating, which somehow it does still draw a rating, I think it would have been gone a few years ago. I think the guy that they should consult on this is Peyton Manning, because one thing that you hear about like the Pro Bowl back when it was in Hawaii was how Peyton Manning turned it into like this convention for star players, right? Like, this is your like elite of elite. It's like the Mensa of football meeting. You know what I mean? Like, this is the elite of the elite, and we get to talk about issues in the league, and we're going to sit around the pool and have a good time and all of that stuff. Like, I think they should enlist people like Peyton Manning and say, how do we make this like a resource for our star players? How do we make this a good thing for our star players that our star players want to participate in? I do think that there could be something there. They just got to find a way to like break that tendency to just want to turn everything into a pot of gold because I don't think that pot of gold's here for the Pro Bowl.
I'll leave you with this. There's a pie to the face for one of the Danettes that hinges on your answer.
Okay.
Most random Pro Bowl quarterback of all time. I'm going to give you two. Steve Berline.
Yep.
And David Garrard.
Steve Berline and David Garrard.
You haven't been asked this question today, have you?
Who would be my most random?
Yeah.
Didn't Blake Bortles make it?
He did, but he led the NFL in, passing touchdowns.
Yeah.
And he was a high draft pick.
See, like, because that's
you only get two. There's only two answers here: David Garrard, Steve Berline.
And can I come up with one that's more random than that? Is what you're saying?
Well, you don't. No, you have to pick between those two.
Oh, who I have to pick between those two? Who is a better player?
No, more random. Pro Bowl quarterback: Steve Berline, David
Steve
Garrard.
Berline.
Oh,
I would say, and it's not an age thing, but Garrard. I think Garrard was like a solid starting quarterback for a playoff team multiple years, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Was Berline ever that?
No.
So what I remember most about Berline was how he was Troy Aikman's replacement that year. The Cowboys first made the playoffs with the triplets, right? Wasn't he? Like he was the quarterback of the team that went into the playoffs that year, the year before they won their first championship.
91.
Like he replaced Aikman, right?
Yeah. 2 games. Yeah.
And then he was the first quarterback of the Carolina Panthers too, I believe.
All right. You just helped a Danette avoid a pie to the face with that answer.
Oh, I didn't. Oh, so no one's getting a pie to the face.
No. Do you want to change your answer?
I screwed everybody.
Yeah, you did. It's all about content. You're the lead content strategist at the Monday Morning Quarterback.
Well, if I had warning that like it would be right if I answered that question wrong, I would have given you Garrard and then somebody have pie in their face and everybody would have won. So I'm sorry, Dan.
So disappointed. Albert, thanks for joining us as always.
All right, thanks for having me, Dan.
Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter and sometimes lead content strategist for the Monday Morning Quarterback.